with Larry's Garden now, and joining us as usual is Larry ONeil. And today he's talking about dwarf shrubbery.
Right. Hey, here's an unbelievable shrub that's dwarf. Most people don't even know that's available as a dwarf. It's crape myrtle. You know those big, huge trees?
Yeah.
Here's one that only gets 18 inches. Just, the same type of flowers. Stays around, some of them are around 4 feet tall, but a beautiful plant. And it gets really compact as it matures. Light pruning, so you can have it as a border plant and not worry about it.
Doesn't get too big.
Doesn't get too big. Some of the great things about dwarf shrubbery is if you want to have a container that you don't want to have to change back and forth all the time, this is a plant to do it with. Dwarf crepe myrtle. Here's a little bit larger one called Ruby Dazzler, and this is almost like a miniature tree. If you like a little bonsai by your pond, this is another beautiful crepe myrtle. Not quite set its flowers, so it's a little later, but the Ruby Dazzler is a beautiful shrub or miniature tree by a pond. It's a great plant in any landscape. Here's another one. We were talking about this, the Tina Turner haircut right here, but
yeah, there you go.
This is a Japanese cedar. A very, very slow-growing plant, evergreen, has that nice limey green color. This is one of the few evergreens that can tolerate some high-filtered light, good drainage. But you can put these two together right here in the sun, and they're just going to look great all season long. Even the contrast of the foliage, they're great partner plants. When I'm using plants, I always try to look for the great combinations of the two materials, their leaves. Make sure they have a little bit of color like flowers, and this is going to be a great combination. If you like more of the darker plants, here's a loropetalum called Pixie. That is a plant that only gets about 1 foot tall, never needs to be pruned. You can put it in a container too also, because it will, fall over, go over the sides like that. That dark contrast.
And you can keep it in a container?
Yeah, you can keep it. Some of the great things about having dwarf plants, they stay in a container.
Okay.
And, have this great contrast between these two elements. If you want something in the shade, here's a Mahonia. It says, normally these things get, I know you're a plant expert,
I'm getting there.
The 5-footers, but this is around 2 to 3 foot, lacy, dry shade, has a beautiful yellow flower. It's just a great plant, low maintenance, no bugs. A great native here, people that love these native plants, is a blueberry, and this one's called Rosy Glow. It's, has a beautiful looking burgundy foliage. Now, this is a plant that doesn't need water. So if you're trying to reduce the amount of water in your landscape, increase the borders, plant some of these, and you're not going to have much water at all.
Do these all range in price? I mean, are they all
That's a good question.
All over the map?
They're all over the map. Crepe myrtles are a little bit, the slower growing plants are normally more expensive.
Yeah. Because
it takes more time for the guy to develop into a plant. But, these are anywhere from around $24 to $15, and disease-free, so you're not going to have to worry about. I was looking for some of the blueberries. Here's a couple of blueberries. Well, there's one right there, but there's very small blueberry. But they are edible, so you can, have a little dessert out there.
Okay.
Here's one more. We got one more time?
Yeah, this is real quick.
This is a dwarf boxwood, great container plant, around 24 inches tall, but you can see it's dense, 1.5 inches a year. That's about it. Get a little fertilizer on it once or twice a year, and you're going to have a great looking container garden. Or if you live in an apartment or complex, you want to have crepe myrtle. Here's one right there. Will work great.
Yeah. Tina Turner hair is my favorite.
Yeah.
I like the Tina Turner.
You like the Lynn?
Yeah.
Okay.
For more information about gardening, log on to larrysgarden.com or give him a call at Larry.